God was protecting me, Brian. I'll tell you, it's the more you think about it, the more you see it. I don't like to think about it much. You know, I have a job to do. It's a little bit of a dangerous profession being president, but I really don't like to think about it too much. I think you're better off not thinking about it.
Of course, it's a lot more dangerous if you're a Republican, and it's even more dangerous still when you're Donald Trump. And the Democrat Party is out there shooting people. You know, they're the left. They're not liberals. Some of them are armed. They're usually transgender, mentally ill. That doesn't make it better, though. And a very good Monday to you. Welcome back once again. I know you might have Democrats in the family. You should probably keep a close eye on them. Something terribly wrong with, what is it? What's the word? All of them. All of them. They got pretty weird pretty fast, didn't they? Yes, they did. They most certainly did. Well, it's been a weekend, and what a weekend it has been. My best girl and I out and about over the weekend. We were down on the waterfront yesterday. Notice there aren't many helicopters going up and down the Potomac River. Not as many as there used to be before the crash between a military helicopter and a civilian passenger airliner at Ronald Reagan's Washington National Airport. Not a lot of, usually you're down there and you got helicopters going overhead every couple of minutes while you're enjoying your cool beverages along the mighty Potomac River. But no, I say, not so many. The times they are a-changing. We got a lot of things changing. You were just listening to President Trump over the weekend. He was talking about the fact that, it was a year ago yesterday that President Trump was in Butler, Pennsylvania for a rally, and a Democrat suicide attacker showed up. One of many Democrat Party suicide attackers showed up. Crooks, your Thomas Crooks, and shot President Trump through the ear on the NBC television station in Washington yesterday. They said, what did they say, Michael? That it was an alleged assassination attempt. It was an alleged assassination attempt. So they say they don't want to, get out in front of the story. They don't want to leap to any conclusions. The gunman was shot and killed by a Secret Service counter sniper, but the local NBC television station, they don't want to jump ahead. They might get sued by the dead guy or something like that, the suicide attacker. Remarkable stuff. But President Trump saying that the hand of God must have been, he's certainly not the first one or the only one to be talking about this, turned his head to the right, brought the chart up at the last minute, and had he not turned his head, had there not been the chart, we would have had a very different outcome, a very different result. And it was kind of bizarre. We didn't plan it this way. But I told you this a year ago today, basically. It was one day after President Trump was shot through the ear, and I told you that in Butler, Pennsylvania, my best girl and I, we were down on the Georgetown waterfront enjoying a cool beverage. And yesterday, there we were down at the same place, the same restaurant, Georgetown waterfront, enjoying a cool beverage once again. And it was the 1-year anniversary of President Trump being shot through the ear. Remember, I told you there was a Democrat there who grudgingly and kind of bitterly said, yeah, looks like he's going to be okay. He was angry. He was miffed. He was not happy at all that Trump was going to be okay, because the Democrats, they're going to fire on Fort Sumter every day till the point gets across, I guess. So we've got that's a good president. President Trump naturally spoke a great deal over the weekend, as he very often does, to the news media on camera, yesterday and Saturday as well. And yesterday went to a big soccer game in New Jersey. Kick the ball, kick. And I think there might have been a goal scored at some point in the game. Actually, as soon as we got to the place down in the waterfront, they had the game up on the big screen because, we're not an English-speaking nation or anything like that, thanks to Barack Obama and the Democrats. It's the fundamental transformation of America. Kick the ball. And a goal scored just as we settled in and got our cool beverages. And then I was reminded how boring soccer is because, honestly, kick. Where's Pele? He's nowhere to be found. So we got a lot going on. Now, The news media, they got all over it. The Washington Post, very angry, the soundbite that we just played for you coming in. The Washington Post headline, how the Trump shooting supercharged beliefs in a divine right of MAGA. Well, that's not exactly right, but they lie every time they begin to type or talk or, cheat on their wives or cheat on their taxes or cheat on their expense reports. They are the Washington Post. How the Trump shooting supercharged beliefs in a divine right of MAGA. Divine right. See, they love confusing religion with politics because they're cultists and they sacrifice children faster than the Incas, throwing them into volcanoes, which they did for the same reason, to change the weather, because the Democrats are a little bit sick. So I got that. And 1 year later, reflecting on the Trump assassination attempt in Butler, that was kind of a big thing. The Democrats, they swept it under the rug. They're not very big on any of this because they're the ones doing the shooting. They kill CEOs and they shoot federal law enforcement agents, and they set fire to Jewish governors' mansions. Oh, that's right, governors' mansions. It was his governor's mansion, and he's a governor, and he's Jewish, so you can't have that stuff, right? So we got that. Also, this made me laugh yesterday because, last week there was a big story, and it's this, the State Department, the Trump administration, cutting back on the number of employees at the State Department. There are 200 million employees at the State Department. And I made that number up, but there are a lot. There are a great many employees at the State Department, more than you need for a building that size. There are a lot of them. So Trump's willingness, this is kind of an amazing thing. They're very upset. Well, this is the New York Times, very upset President Trump, the way that he's arming Ukraine. They want to arm Ukraine. They want the war to go on forever. They're in the back pocket of the military-industrial complex and all that. But I need to update you on this, too, because Trump's willingness to arm Ukraine puts him closer to Biden approach. That's the New York Times. You guys need to take an overdose of fentanyl down at the New York Times, really do, and do it on a rooftop, because it's more fun that way, I think. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, it puts him, no, it doesn't, because the Europeans are paying for it all. And it's not another $100 billion to us. I think the last bill was $60 billion from Joe Biden. Oh, yeah, like over lunch. He used an auto pen. Oh, you got an update on the auto pen, too. And because Joe Biden finally sat down with the New York Times for the first time in 5 years or something. And oh, yeah, I didn't sign any of those. There were too many of them, pardoning all the Democrat criminals and abusing my presidential power. But I've got that. I've got that, too, because that's fun. But I love the Trump's willingness to arm Ukraine puts him closer to Biden approach. No, nothing will put him closer to Biden approach. But back to the State Department, because it was a big story, the news media being the Democrat Party front group that they all are. The State Department started firing more than 1,350 workers. They always use the Soviet lexicon, the USSR, like workers of the world, unite. You need a shower. Isn't that amazing? So big story. They were all over it. State Department starts firing more than 1,350 workers in Trump's shakeup of diplomatic corps, or as Barack Obama might say, the diplomatic corpse. Might say the diplomatic corpse. I wonder if they have any corpsmen over there. Yeah, that's good stuff. So the diplomat and the Reuters news agency. But and I was aware of that because the news media was going crazy about it last week and over the weekend, and it was in the headlines all over the place. And then a little noticed story out of Chicago, Illinois. Chicago Public Schools lays off 1,458 workers, right, for enrollment, program changes. They've got program changes. So wait a minute, Chicago Public Schools are laying off more people than the State Department, and the news media got their panties in a terribly uncomfortable wedge over the State Department layoffs from the federal government, millions of employees. But the Chicago Public Schools are laying off more people than that. Also, if you look at CNN and ABC News and add up the Washington news media people, I think they laid off more people in the last 6 months than the State Department is having laid off. But never mind that. Speaking of Democrats, child predator, among more than 300 nabbed in cannabis farm ICE raid, largest of Trump's second term. That's the Fox News headline there. So wait a minute, but there is more than one child predator because they arrested 300 illegal aliens. And there are so many child sexual predators among them that it's almost like it's a different culture. I don't know if have you ever witnessed any different culture? Not every culture is the same. Have you noticed that? Some cultures are communist. Some cultures sexually abuse children. Some cultures genitally mutilate children. And now we do too. And that's because the Democrats are here. So child sex predators are the number multiplying across the United States because it's the fundamental transformation of America that Barack Obama promised when he told us we should all learn to, teach our kids to speak Spanish because they might have to be servants on Martha's Vineyard too. Just tell them not to go paddleboarding. Don't go paddleboarding, especially if you just learned how to swim. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, so child predator and a whole lot of bad guys among just at the marijuana farms that were staffed by illegal aliens, gang members, criminals, child sex predators. The Democrat Party, they applaud this because they're open-minded. So open-minded that their brains fell out and went splat on the asphalt long ago. Just amazing stuff. And a Democrat judge ordered a pause on immigration raids because we need more illegal aliens loose on the streets of the United States, if you ask any Democrat judge. And they're not good people. They're not smart people. They're not honest people. Trump administration to appeal L.A. judge's order pausing immigration raids, the Orange County Register is reporting. Isn't that amazing? Yes, it is. So also, listen to this. Appalling secret of illegal migrant cannabis farmer who Democrats called a strawberry farmer. Strawberries. That's the cane mutiny over here. During dystopian ICE raid. The ICE raid was dystopian. Yeah. That's the Daily Mail. In England, they put you in prison for exercising free speech. They're becoming more like the Soviet Union. Isn't that amazing? And also, the Democrats in California, Gavin Newsom, and the gang that he runs with, they're, of course, providing taxpayer-funded. The media always calls it free medical coverage. It's not free. It's just paid for by the suckers that are still paying taxes in California. GOP congressman rips Gavin Newsom for providing illegal migrants with Medi-Cal. Medi-Cal, they have their own, health care system there. And Gavin said, you're an illegal alien gang member, sexual predator, criminal wanted in your home country? Well, we've got free health care for you. It's not that it's free. It's just that somebody else will pay for it. You get it for free because you're a criminal. And we love crime. That's the Democrat Party's thing. Yes, sir. We got that. And, Joe Biden said he made the clemency decisions. That's what Joe Biden said. Told the New York Times, sat down, they had a hot oil massage in a hot tub, the New York Times and Joe Biden, which is pretty creepy, isn't it? Yes, it is. And what is it? Well, we've got some of the excerpts from the New York Times because these guys, Now, he hasn't done an interview with the New York Times in the whole 4 years of his alleged presidency. He never sat down with the New York Times to be fluffed by them. Isn't that amazing? I've got Jeffrey Epstein, and this is Pam Bondi, because Pam Bondi is, she's in the crosshairs of a lot of people right now. President Trump commented on this, and Dan Bongino and Kash Patel. There's a lot going on there, Yes, sir. So we have that, and an update on Zoran Manni. The Democrats, is he their favorite communist jihadist? I'm not sure. They've got a lot of favorite communist jihadists, don't they? They love the jihad. They hate the Jews. They love Zoran Manni. He could be their next presidential candidate. Aren't they wonderful? Yes, sir. And the New York Post, why the left That's right. Why the left, from normal Dems to Antifa, have lost their collective minds. We have that coming up as well. We remain at 888-630-9625.
You need to make sure your child can speak Spanish.
Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris. All right, let's go to the telephones, Michael, and talk to the nice people. Let's go to Radu, calling from Potomac, Maryland. Radu, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hello, Chris. I've talked to you many times. As you know, I'm a diehard Republican. I'm a diehard Trump fan. Voted for him 3 times. I grew up under communism, came to this country legally 46 years ago. Right now, I'm very frustrated. Number one, all 4 people should be fired. Hegseth, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino. Hegseth, never liked him from day one. I think he's incompetent. I don't think he can run an organization of 1 million people. The way he embarrassed Trump during that press conference, the fact that he stopped the, munitions to Ukraine, and you could tell from that press conference that Trump had no idea that happened. That's insulting and embarrassing. Pam Bondi has lied to us, okay? All 3 of them, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and Dan Bongino, for 2 years they were saying that, for sure that he was killed, Epstein. And for sure there is a list. And the minute we get in office, all of those are going to come out and we're going to release them and so on and so forth. And then, just last week, a week ago, they are on my desk. The lists are on my desk. They're going to be released. And then nothing. It's a lie. Dan Bongino kept on saying, I have sources in the FBI who are telling me that for sure he was killed, and there are lists. And when we get in office, those are released. All of a sudden, they are in office. There is nothing. So either you lied then or you're lying now, or you should release the name of your sources. I am super frustrated with all 4 of them. I think all 4 of them have to go. And by the way, look, I love Trump. I think he's always done well. But it is rich for him when asked the question, Epstein, that's an old story. You still asking for that? Well, wait a second. You guys are just going after Brennan and Comey. Isn't that an old story from 8 years ago? Like I said, Chris, a little frustrated right now. Thank you for letting me vent.
Yeah, you bet. That's why we're here, man. As Radu, been talking to Radu for many years, as he said early on, he escaped communism, as he said, in Eastern Europe, and he doesn't put up with bourgeois. He doesn't like the bourgeois. I know that there are a lot of people that feel very much as Radu feels now. I've spoken to and communicated with text messages and so on over the weekend. A great many people that feel a lot like that. What do you hear? I've got John Solomon coming up and Joe DeGeneva coming up. Now, there's this big fight going on inside the Justice Department and the FBI, and you're undoubtedly aware of all of this. We've got Kash Patel, the FBI director, and Dan Bongino, well known here as the deputy FBI director, versus Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi did say, I think it was February 21st, in an interview with John Roberts on the Fox News channel, when asked, hey, what happened to this releasing the Jeffrey Epstein client list? Because there was a lot of talk about that. Now you guys have been in for months. And John Roberts asked the question, and Pam Bondi said this.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients? Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now.
It's sitting on my desk right now, and it's awaiting review, she said. You know how in Washington everybody loves to review things. There's a lot of reviewing going on. Always under review. Never any action. But Pam Bondi said that, and then, that was February, right? A month, February 21st, so it was a month into the second Trump administration, a month into Pam Bondi being Attorney General. And there it is. Yeah, it's on my desk awaiting review. And then nothing. Poof. We didn't get it. And then we're told, well, there really is no client list. There is no client list. And no, nobody else is going to be charged. Nobody else is going to be charged. Now, we were going back and forth on this yesterday, and on a text thread, and Michael Piercy and Kevin Tober and Randy Lefevre and myself, we were going back and forth, and I got to say, there's a lot to be said about all of this from all kinds of angles, no doubt about it. Our government continues to be our government, even with President Trump in the White House and his pick, Pam Bondi, as Attorney General, and his pick, Kash Patel as FBI Director, and his pick, Dan Bongino as Deputy FBI Director. And it's true, Dan and Kash and Pam Bondi had all said out loud, well, we're gonna find out about all this stuff that we've been stonewalled about, that we've been lied to about, and we are going to expose it. And now here we are, coming up on 6 months in. Well, I guess we're past 6 months in now. Are we? Let me see. Let me do my gazintas. Get out my Jethro Bodine calculator. Almost 6 months in, and we still don't have it. And it is kind of frustrating. And I know that Dan Bongino has certainly expressed his frustration with the state of affairs, the condition that we're in. But I did, while we were going back, and there's audio that I want to get to share with you on this. But one of the things that I wrote to Michael and Randy and Kevin yesterday on our text thread of 4 people, and I've got to say I saw like a bit of it online, but isn't it interesting that with the no release of the Jeffrey Epstein client list, and the Democrats are out there yelling and pounding the table, Trump's on the client list, Trump's on the client. Now, let me just share with you my thoughts from yesterday. Have you noticed that there's a lot of outrage from Trump voters that the Jeffrey Epstein client list has not been made public, that more on Jeffrey Epstein and all of that hasn't been made available to the public, hasn't been released, right? They have it, but they haven't released. So they say, and I'll take them at their word that they have it, but they haven't released it. And then they say, oh, there's really nothing to see, and there will be no more prosecutions. Really? So more than 1,000 underage girls were sexually abused, and there will be no more charges? Just Ghislaine Maxwell doing 20 years in prison, Jeffrey Epstein dies in a jail cell one way or the other, and that's it. Nobody else. More than 1,000 underage girls, right, in the private plane and the private island and all that. So we've got that. And the Democrats are screaming, that's the reason they're not releasing it, because they lie about absolutely everything that they say out loud. And when they don't lie out loud, they're quietly thinking lies. And they only share them when they go home at night, I think. But listen to this, because this occurred to me yesterday. Have you noticed that not one Democrat in America has expressed outrage that the Epstein list has not been released, the Epstein client list, and more information on the Epstein criminal enterprise, child sex abuse going on forever and ever? And I noticed, I texted Michael and Randy and Kevin, I said, no outrage from any Democrat that the Epstein file, the client list, not been released, not been made public. Isn't that interesting? No outrage from Chuck Schumer that the Epstein client list hasn't been released. No outrage from Nancy Pelosi. No desk pounding from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. AOC is not outraged by this. Kamala Harris, who was their candidate, not a peep out of her about the Epstein client list. We have to make that public. Why is that? Not a single Democrat in the entire Congress, in the House or the Senate, has expressed anger that the Epstein client list has not been released. Isn't that amazing? Why are they comfortable with this? Because, they raise hell about everything. That, the weather, gender, everything has them completely screwed up. But not this. Total silence from the entirety of the Democrat Party leadership, the Democrat Party rank and file, the Democrat Party illegal alien house cleaners. You don't hear a peep out of any of them. Isn't that amazing? So if the Democrats actually thought that Donald Trump's name would be found on the Jeffrey Epstein client list, which we know they don't, it's already been litigated and resolved long ago. They were two rich guys in New York, so they encountered each other at, big fundraisers, no doubt, at the Metropolitan Museum of Art and things. And Epstein apparently showed up at Mar-a-Lago one time many years ago, and Trump threw him out of Mar-a-Lago, apparently almost physically. You're so out of here, get out of here. But never mind that. But if the Democrats actually believed that Donald Trump's name would be found on the Jeffrey Epstein list, then they would be firebombing churches and throwing Molotov cocktails at Jewish governors' mansions until the list was released. But they haven't. Not a peep out of him anywhere. And I guess that's because Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi know, and all of them know, because they tell their other communist fellow travelers that the list is 95% Democrats. It's probably not 100% Democrats, but they know that it's 95% Democrats. Otherwise, they'd be raising Cain and demanding that the list be released, right? But not a single Democrat is in a huff about any of this. Isn't that fascinating? Why? Explain that. And the answer is Democrats protecting Democrats. Even if they know there are some Republicans in there, they know that it would be a funeral pyre for themselves. They'd be self-immolating if they pounded the table and burned things down until the list was released. And who was it? It was Alan Dershowitz, the audio that we played last week, who said, oh, there is an Epstein list. I've seen it. I know who's on it, and I know why they're being protected, right? And Alan Dershowitz, we played the audio for you on Friday, maybe on Thursday or Friday, of the law professor emeritus at the Harvard University Law School. And he's historically been quite a reliable person and a lifelong Democrat, Alan Dershowitz.
Let me tell you, I know for a fact documents are being suppressed. And they're being suppressed to protect individuals. I know the names of the individuals. I know why they're being suppressed. I know who's suppressing them. But I'm bound by confidentiality from a judge and cases, and I can't disclose what I know.
He couldn't possibly disclose what he knows because he's bound by confidentiality and something having to do with a court, because there's a lot of court going on in Democrat world. Boy, is there a lot of court going on in Democrat world. But that, I think, is interesting. The Dersh says, "Oh yeah, I've seen the list. I know the names on it, but I can't tell you. Couldn't possibly tell you." And not a single Democrat, not Chuck Schumer, not AOC, not Nancy Pelosi, none of them angrily pounding the lectern and demanding that the list be released. Why? Why is that? Isn't there a cover-up going on? Isn't that fascinating? Just amazing stuff. So we've got that now. With that said, let us go to some audio here, because now number seven. We've not played number 7. President Trump last night, he came home from New Jersey where kick the ball, and another boring game. It's called soccer, and President Trump came home and naturally he had another conversation with the press on the tarmac at Andrews Air Force Base, or Joint Base Andrews, when he arrived back on Air Force One. And my best girl and I, we watched the presidential helicopters come into the city and land with the president last night. But President Trump last night at Andrews.
Oh, I think so. I did. I spoke to him today. Dan Bongino, very good guy. I've known him a long time. I've done his show many, many times. And he sounded terrific, actually. No, I think he's in good shape.
No, I think he's in good shape. Done his show. We were talking to Radu, and Radu's a smart guy. I've spoken to him for many years. And escaped communism, as he said, and all that. And Radu has had it. He's had it with Pete Hegseth. He's had it with Pam Bondi. He's had it with Kash Patel. He's had it with Dan Bongino. And he wants the list. He wants people to make good on the promises they made before they got into these government positions. And cough it up. You said you're going to do this. Do this. Now, the reporter there, I should have set it up a little better, asked a question. Have you spoken to your FBI director, Kash Patel? Sounded like, whatever. But, and he said, oh, yeah, I spoke to him, and I spoke to Dan Bongino, and good guy. Good guy. He's a good guy. Done his show many times. Because, he had a radio show on this very station where my mothership is, and probably on the station that you listen to. And now my friend Vince Colonnese is in there. Also comes out of this studio in Washington, but never mind that. Isn't that amazing? So President Trump sounds like he's not in the mood to fire anybody. And in fact, he came out in defense of Pam Bondi over the weekend, and it was a big deal when he came out in support of Pam Bondi, and it sounded like he was going to stick with her no matter what in what President Trump said, expressing his support for Pam Bondi, right? And it doesn't sound like President Trump is in a mood to fire anybody. But here, the New York Fake Times with their headline yesterday, Trump pleads with followers to back Bondi in dispute over Epstein inquiry. So the New York Times is in here. I assume they're defending Epstein and, of course, child sexual abuse because they're the New York Times. Now, President Trump wrote out a 398-word post. He did not mention Dan Bongino in the 398-word post. And the New York Times wrote, that would appear to leave Mr. Bongino in the lurch. The lurch? I would say a lurch. Wouldn't you say a lurch? Doesn't that leave you in a lurch, not the lurch? There's not just one lurch that you might find yourself in. But the New York Times wrote, that would appear to leave Mr. Bongino in the lurch. Ms. Bondi's allies in the administration believe he has burned his bridges and needs to leave. Sure. Ms. Bondi's allies in the administration believe that he, meaning Dan Bongino, has burned his bridges and he needs to leave, according to two people familiar with her thinking. That's the New York Times. Justice Department and FBI spokesmodel declined to comment to the New York Times, which is probably the right thing to do. In a long social media post, though, President Trump praised his Attorney General, Pam Bondi, and told his followers, the New York Times refers to his voters, his supporters as followers. Now, you guys are still caught up in your cult-like application of love and admiration for Barack Hussein Obama, who, as you know, could slow the rise of the oceans. That's the kind of power that Barack Obama has or had. If he could slow the rise of the oceans, I know I'm going to go back to his chef and the paddleboard, but never mind that. So the New York Times says President Trump praised Attorney General Pam Bondi, told his followers not to waste time and energy, that's a quote, on the Jeffrey Epstein case. Yeah, on the Jeffrey Epstein, don't waste your time and energy on the Jeffrey Epstein case because, and it is kind of odd. The whole thing is a bit odd. And Trump voters want answers to these questions as a rule. And this back and forth between, it was less Kash Patel, more Dan Bongino versus Pam Bondi. This back and forth about who knows what and said what when and all of this good stuff. But amazing. And I've got to tell you, there's a lot going on here, and the media loves it because they want to blow up the Trump administration. And if they can blow up the Justice Department, if they can blow up the FBI, then the media will be on board with that all the way. You know how they are. I have the former U.S. Attorney Joe DeGeneva and a friend of mine, Joe DeGeneva. He was on the WMAL O'Connor and Company show this morning. I want to share a couple of things that Joe DeGeneva said about all of this and Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi. That's coming up.
This was the moment when the rise of the ocean began to slow and our planet began to heal. This was the moment.
All right, I've got Joe DeGeneva coming up on all this. I have also John Solomon, the great reporter, coming up on all of this as well. The list, and Epstein, and Bongino, and Kash Patel, and Pam Bondi, and President Trump. What a town this is, huh? Let's go to the telephones. Let's go to Cliff, calling from King George, Virginia. Clifford, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Chris, how you doing, man? Thank you for being a voice of reason, of common sense. I worked in a county locally for 23 years, and the sad part about this,
as a police officer.
Yes, sir. And 7 of those years was spent in narcotics, intelligence, vice. Look, quit the playing games about a list. There's a list. I mean, if anybody has been inside the workings of that kind of operation would know that there's a list, and it's about money so that you can continue to get money and put in front of that person the things that drew them in the first place. They need to be, it's nice to get a list out that maybe the non-mainstream media would be putting more pressure on them to investigate. But if 1,000 children were victimized, you're telling me that none of them have any idea of who did what to them?
Right.
And you're telling me that you can't investigate backwards in that? To say you don't have a list is a straight up. I can't categorically say that, but knowing how they work inside of an organization like that, I'll give you an example. Let's turn the table to drugs. Do you really think the cartel doesn't know who they're dealing with, and they don't have a list of that? Somehow, if you got a decoder ring, you might have to decode it, but it's probably not going to be a list with John F. Kennedy or Barack Obama like that written on it, but it would be something that you could decode.
Well, Barack Obama's name is coming up in a couple of minutes, actually, having to do with law enforcement and grand juries. That's coming up, so stay right there. But, Cliff, let me ask you this, and I'm running out the clock on you here, pal, but why do you think the list is not being made public? Why?
Because of the embarrassment that it's going to bring to the bulk of the people on the list. I think people ought to realize that sin is common to human beings, the Republicans, Democrats, Independents. It's who is going to be most damaged by this. Who has the most? If George Soros was on there, would it beg the reason that he ain't letting it out?
Wow. Yeah. Very good, Cliff. Yeah.